Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. I will not be delaying much tonight, as I have not really slept last night already because of all the events. Don't worry, I really wanted to start with my aunt here, but if I do that, then we're just running out of time. I'll just sleep and then I'll just do that other stuff. Finally, it's done. I promise you, I have just been overworked lately because, we have some interesting news. You see, Russian security forces stormed on June 16th a detention center in Rostov-on-Don, killing at least some of the prisoners who took two prison staff members hostage. This was reported by the state-owned news agency TASS. Originally, we all kind of heard that they all were dead, because that's the tactics of Russian special forces. If you remember the Nordost tragedy and, also the recent one, it's all just a massive mess. And then they kind of have trouble investigating all this stuff, and, we wonder why. 6 prisoners of them, some of whom were accused of ties to ISIS, took the 2 employees hostage in the morning of June 16th. They were armed with a pocket knife, a rubber baton, and a fire axe, but failed to take possession of any firearms. It's believed that the hostage-taking had been prepared for several months. Even though the prisoners were kept in different cells, they managed to communicate with each other. And, that managed to communicate with each other thing is what Western audiences mostly are surprised about, but, not you. You guys have heard my prison culture episodes. Of course, they had that internal mail. What's really was scary, really, was that it was not just communication, which is massively underreported because I waited a bit just to see. And it turns out that very few people actually report that they were sitting there with full beards and ISIS flags and ISIS symbolism, a lot of it. It was a bit insane because, no one knows. Even the Z channels, and we'll get to them later on, none of them even understand how this could have been possible. Because you see, in prison system, you have to be clean-shaven all the time. And they kind of cut your hair as well, and they were bearded men with weapons and ISIS flags in Rostov-on-Don. Weirdly enough, this prison, by the way, this prison was considered to be the best one in all of the area. They had received an award, and the whole, the director, the officials had even posed in front of their award. And the locals were, of course, worried because these guys wanted to escape, apparently, as far as we know now, but that failed. However, when they were sent in for negotiations, they sent in more people, including the prison staff, and, then more people were taken hostage. And then, of course, after a long day, Russian FSB just blasts in, and everyone's dead now. At the same time, the civilians around were very worried since, criminalization of Russia is going on in full strength, and we have Wagner Group people around also committing murders just after returning from Ukraine, and recently soldier who had participated in the taking of Bakhmut, he had at the same day, by the way, murdered a 5-year-old kid with a knife. I'm pointing this out not to make you feel grossed out, because it is gross, but just because I don't even want to say out loud all the horrible things. I mean, I'm not a supporter of ISIS, but the Russian Z channels, they still think all these pro-war people, they're so much anti-Nazi, yet at the same time they're literally spewing out things which I find extremely distasteful, because to call them neo-Nazis would be an insult to neo-Nazis at this point. Even, at least skinheads and those people who associate with the fringes of the far right, they, in the Western world at least, know enough not to go and call for an ethnic cleansing and mass genocide, and depicting exactly what horrible tortures these guys should have suffered instead of just being allowed to die, which is a very ineffective measurements, since right now, of course, no one knows where the attack came from. Anastasia Koshevarova, whom I quoted last time, she, after all, again, spent a lot of time complaining that it must be Ukrainians. But, it's not really a surprise, to be honest. I mean, if your special services, if your cops are busy just blaming non-existent Ukrainian ties to everything, then what can you expect? Of course, they don't have any time to, prepare and capture real criminals, real terrorists who will fight back. It's not like the whole joke which happened back in 2019 where one of the Rosgvardia guys who was like beating up protesters, they threw like a little paper, very thin plastic glass at him, one of those one-time use only. And and then he managed to go to court with mental trauma. Because obviously, why not? It is just utter idiocy. Now, of course, I'm not justifying Islamic State at all. And I'm just surprised how they were allowed to just keep their symbolism, plan all this out and everything. And as much as the Russians would love to go on about how this is all Ukrainian fault, no, this is just blatant incompetence. And what's important to understand here is that this is with everything. This is like not something that is just, somewhat of issue in the army. No. This is how Russia works. And at the same time, they say the wildest things, and the reality and what they postulate, they're unrelated things completely. And about this, by the way, Vladimir Putin is now visiting Pyongyang. And he wrote an article. Well, he supposedly, I'm not sure if he did it because he doesn't use computer, but someone wrote it for him and he posted under his name. And it was posted in the North Korean newspaper Nodog Sinmun. I can't pronounce Korean at all, but Wisp, please, if you know, then tell me. But this was an article signed by him, and it was called "Russia and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea: Traditions of Friendship and Cooperation Through the Years." In the article, which is posted on the official Kremlin site, Putin wrote that, quote, "The relations of friendship and good neighborliness between Russia and the DPRK, based on the principles of equality, mutual respect, and trust, have more than 7 decades in history and are rich in glorious traditions." I'm not making this up, it was literally glorious. The Russian president recalled that it was the Soviet Union that was the first in the world to recognize the North Korea, establishing diplomatic relations, and then, again, direct quote, "helped Korean friends to build a national economy, establish a healthcare system, develop science and education, train professional, administrative, and technical personnel." The Russian Federation and North Korea, according to this article, continue to actively develop a multifaceted partnership. They continue on by saying, "We highly appreciate the DPRK's firm support for Russia's special military operation in Ukraine, its solidarity with us on key international issues, and readiness to defend common priorities and views on the platform of the United Nations." Now, you would expect that this would be some random platitudes and all this nonsense, the usual, you have to say something nice because you're visiting and something, but no. That would be the sane option, and we're not living in the sane reality. See, Putin went on to, just as usual, repeat talking points about evil Americans. Those evil Americans. About the United States' attempts to, quote, "impose a global neo-colonial dictatorship based on double standards of the world, on the world, and that the United States and its satellites themselves provoked the conflict in Ukraine." No, don't get me wrong. I highly doubt that he actually understands what double standards is. It's just that, according to him, Russia has one party and you guys have two, so you have like two standards. I would read it that way because he doesn't believe in democracy anyways, and I honestly cannot imagine what else he would have thought. But now to the fun part, which I needed this snarky remark for. Our adversaries continue to supply the neo-Nazi Kiev regime with money, weapons, and intelligence, and allow and actually encourage the use of modern Western weapons and equipment to launch attacks on Russian territory, and more often than not on obviously peaceful targets. Blatant lies. Just straight up lies. They are threatening to send their military contingents to Ukraine. Well, that is true, and I hope that we will at some point. At the same time, they're trying to wear down our economy with more and more sanctions and provoke the growth of social and political tension inside the country. Now, Mr. Putin, I have to respond to you. It's just that you have Wagner Group people, and you have been, doing things in Syria with Mr. Bashar Assad there, and you're like I said, like after this whole yesterday's debacle with other like neo-Nazi points to such a level where I truly just couldn't bear myself. I mean, normally I'm not a very politically correct person here. I'm honest. And, if those of you who have met me, you know that I am here on the show. I'm like that in real life, except my voice sounds a bit different because I'm speaking in English here, not in Latvian. But, I communicate the same way and everything, and I've talked about some extremely horrible subject matters here, but if I would just give you those quotes, I'd be cancelled instantly. I would be just cancelled straight up. Someone would take them out of context, and then I'd just get instantly bashed somewhere. I mean, on the side note, Demetrios, I suppose, the Greek guy. No, your Google Translate was wrong. I kind of understood that I realized that I posted on my personal Facebook that the whole Pride Month and everything, people running around, it was fun, but, I'm too old to go to public events, and I just sit at home and at work, especially in the work areas, and I just thought it's, a bit of a fuss and, not personally interested. Everything's fine, but, people are doing their thing. And apparently Google Translate mistranslated it because I just got the fact that Facebook had removed it, my post, because it was apparently deemed offensive or something, and I don't know. So, someone really read things that weren't there. They really used a lot of swear words at me and then quit Patreon. And well, if you're listening, I just wanted to apologize because that's a huge misunderstanding instead of anything objective. Because if you spot something where I might have said something weird and questionable, you can just email me and then ask about it, because honestly, it's not intentional. Intentionally, I just make these episodes, and I just respect you enough that I sometimes explain this. And this is in context because, again, this is probably the only time when I'm, when I'm not gonna go on, because basically it's just ethnic cleansing and graphic descriptions on how they should be tortured, which gives me very hard PTSD feelings, since I actually listened to Wagner Group guys and Rusic guys who are actual neo-Nazis talking about their violence, and I just don't want to get there. But thankfully, Putin is misguided as usual. Quote, "All attempts to contain and isolate Russia have failed," Putin has declared, noting that our Korean friends, despite years of economic pressure, provocations, blackmail, and military threats from the United States, are just as effective in defending their interests. At the end of the article, the Russian president expresses the hope that Russia and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, quote, "through joint efforts will be able to bring bilateral interaction to an even higher level," and wishes good health to Comrade Kim Jong-un and peace and large-scale successes on the path of development to all the friendly people of DPRK. Which obviously is a thing, right? I don't know. This in context in the same day where the crisis happened just hits me the wrong way. Before we move on to the Z channels and the economic news a bit, I wanted to chill a bit because I am told that I need to. After all, I'm married now. We've sold 4 orders of the t-shirts. T-shirts are sent automatically. I just apparently received a couple of maps back, which I'm sad about, but I will get to them when I get some sleep. I dealt with the post, and I think I'll switch to DPD or something. Latvian post is just not reliable enough. If you haven't received your map, because some of them were like things were falling off, I had like miswritten something possibly, and they had like opened the package and ripped some stuff out. Please PM me on Discord. I know about two people that I need to send everything. But if you haven't received your maps, please let me know. I do not want to make you feel disappointed. Now, there is no problems with our shirts and everything, and we're going to include other products there. We also have our our mugs and shirts of Club of Angry Patriots, because that's shipped locally from the United States. And Echo on Discord, which you can join, I added the Discord invite link on the same space on the Eastern Border of the website where you can go and look at the merch store. You can join Discord. Over there, he said that it's actually pretty high quality. I mean, surprisingly high. It wasn't cheap looking, and the prices are apparently adequate. So that's nice. And of course, I wanted to say super thanks to all my Patreons. If you're a Patreon member, we'll even give you a discount. Just let me know. And thank you for supporting the show. And if you want to support us as well, please go to patreon.com/theeasternborder or go to theeasternborder.lv. Click the donate links, maybe grab a t-shirt. We also have Bitcoin and Ethereum wallets, which are not very actively used, but still. So, let's hope for a better tomorrow. Oh, and of course, all the profits from Club of Angry Patriots merch goes to Ukrainian army, of course. But after this horrible part is over, I don't even know. I've been doing this for a decade now, and I still feel very awkward when I have to do the advertisement talk. Aneta is away and not available currently, but she'll be back, so we'll have properly edited episodes. By the way, next one is going to be with John Michael Gauthier. Yes, our friend from Event Horizon and his YouTube channel, where we're going to talk live. We moved today. It's going to be on Friday midnight. That is Latvian midnight from Friday to Saturday, which is 4 p.m. in Missouri and apparently morning in Australia. So people who normally can't get to them can maybe come to our Discord channel. We're going to be doing it there and in our voice chat group. And you can, after we've done with the episode, you can ask your questions there and everything. It's going to be fun. We're going to talk about space warfare, because the Cold War in space is a thing now, apparently, and they have satellites who can shoot down other satellites, and nuclear power, rearmaments, basically what we can expect from the end of all this. And hopefully it's going to be way scientific, because, these 2 days and all this stuff really drag me down. But back to the proper stuff. Z channels gave important context to Defense Ministry's usual standard statements about yet more glorious victories, which is awesome, because these are at least happy things, because they currently are under pressure since the Defense Minister, basically Belousov, decided to meet some of them, but he met only those totally, not Kalashnikov or Girkin's buddies, but he met totally pro-Russian propaganda people. And Z channels were very disappointed about this, because the real situation on the front is still not being reported on. But right now, the Defense Ministry is cutting, really just threatening all these independent war corps. Well, so-called war corps, basically. But we call them zakruchivание гаек, or tightening the screws, basically. That's what's happening here. So they are being a bit careful. Interfax reports, Russian troops have occupied the village of Zagornoye in Zaporizhia region. The Russian Defense Ministry said on Sunday. Units on the Vostok grouping of troops have liberated the village of Zagornoye in the Zaporizhia region and occupied more favorable lines, the ministry said. And here are some reports on everything. Mir сегодня with Yuri Podolyaka. Yuri Podolyaka is a person that I also hate personally, because he's a traitor. He moved to Russia, was very pro-Putin, and he's Ukrainian who moved there. And he's one of those super optimistic guys who usually just yells about how Russia's going to conquer everything. He's been doing that since day one, so I'm quite surprised to read his points on this. Quote, this is a village, or rather even a hamlet, in which only 14 people lived in 2001. There are no other data. Judging by the fact that there is no later data, these were old people who had long since died before today. It is essentially an abandoned ruin in one street 400 meters long. Just multiply that by 3, 1,200 feet approximately. But that's not even the point of the situation. The funny thing is that on our maps, it had been listed as ours, that is Russian, and comments here, for a long time, as well as on the Ukrainian maps. That is, these news already have a beard. These positions and all this stuff is known to our enemies for a long time, and Podolyaka repeats, very long time. And I quote here, it's a mystery to me why the press service of the Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation recalled it today. It would have made sense to show, for example, the results. But after all, we're not even stepping here. However, I have never been able to understand how the official propaganda works, which is strange from Mr. Podolyaka, but this reporting is what people up there, Putin and everyone else of his buddies, that's what they hear, and this is what they operate from. This is why they write all this stuff. And Voyenkor Kotionok, you should probably know him by now, a very aggressive neo-Nazi supporter, wrote the following about this, quote, "There is a feeling of newly invented and presented overmoga," which is like peremoga is victory in Russian, and overmoga would be even over that, like he's mocking Ukrainians, which happened with the information presentation in the military department, or at least under the former leadership of the defense ministry, when in the absence of major advances on the front line, successes were pulled out of the finger. It turns out that the principle, you can make mistakes but you can't lie, which is, by the way, the new minister's Belousov's personal kind of mandate there, voiced as an axiom by the new head of the military department, is still not working in full force, to put it mildly. And the brave informers in the rear are hoarding successes in the expectations of praise and encouragement. So, Russian Ministry of Defense, again, reports everything as it doesn't exist in real life, and everyone's just complaining. Nothing really seems to be changing there. However, I want to return to, I presume, some people's favorite subject, and thing that I actually know quite a lot about, because that's one of the specialties here, economy. Because that, I think, is going to really decide what's going to happen in the war. Because Ukrainians are struggling, Russians are struggling, and all these economy news, very important. After all, we're going to have to rebuild after the war, and, if sanctions don't work, can we continue selling Russia their equipment? Not much is going to change. However, inflation is rising in Russia. At the same time, banks are increasingly denying citizens' loan applications. As a result, Russians are turning more and more to payday lenders to buy basic necessities like food and clothing. And obviously, this does not bode well. Journalists from the independent Russian outlet Holod, or Cold, by the way, spoke to two economists and a lawyer about how Russia's payday loan services work and what their rise could bring in the future. So, I bring you a bit of a summary here from the data. In 2023, Russians took out a record-breaking 1 trillion rubles, approximately $11.2 billion in payday loans. That's an increase of 30% from 2022. Experts predict that the figure could increase again by as much as 25% in 2024. By the end of 2023, the number of Russians using microfinance organizations, they're referred to as MFOs here in the article, so I'll just be using that, had reached 19.9 million, which is 2.7 million more people than in the previous year. And as of the end of the first quarter of 2024, about 32% of these loans were overdue. Payday loans in Russia are capped at 1 million rubles, which is about $11,000, 11,000 with something, and generally have a repayment period of between 1 week and 60 days. Interest rates on these loans are high, averaging at about 0.5 to 0.8% per day, or up to 292 to 300% per year. That's 292 to 300% per year. They can be secured easily and quickly, both online and offline, with applications often processed in less than an hour, and money often disbursed in the same day. Traditional bank loans, in contrast, in Russia can take several days to process, and the refusal rate from major Russian banks reached 80% in October of last year. 80. Currently, the average monthly income of Russians applying for payday loans, that is those people who get them. And mind you, this is a good salary, because they are just posting numbers, but I have to explain that the salary number here, they're mostly Moscow, St. Petersburg people. Their income is way bigger than on the countryside. We're talking about big city, living in the most sort of rich areas. We're talking about wealthy middle class here. Poor people probably can't even get those, or just they do, but in lesser amounts. But basically, yeah, these average monthly income of these Russians who apply for payday loans is 50,000 rubles per month, which is about, sit down if you're standing, $562 per month. That's good salary for Russia at this point. Well, the average size of these loans, by the way, is approximately 10,000 rubles, which is about $112. In general, Russians, according to statistical data and economists, turned to payday loans to purchase food and clothing as well as to pay off older loans. I mentioned this previously where we spoke how about 17% of the Russian families, at least last year, because I think I spoke about this a year ago or something, there was a situation where 17% of Russian families had to pay off about 80% of their income just to cover their debts. So right now, the situation is a bit worse even. Economist Nikolai Kulbak told Holod about this, and he stated that most people who use payday loans in Russia use them more than once. In 2023, about 83.4% of payday loan recipients were repeat customers. And I mean, Putin can speak as much as he wants about how great the economy is, but if your country and if your people have to go and do payday loans en masse and they're very traumatic, yeah, it's like my mom was scammed by some quote unquote friends by them, and I had to deal with this stuff because my mom's not as young as she used to be and stuff, so don't like them as much at all. I think they're predatory, but if a massive population does them, yeah, that alone shows that nothing really is going well. According to economist Yevgeny Nadroshin, the current rate of growth of the payday lending industry in Russia is obviously a bad sign for the health of the Russian economy. He told Holod, quote, Russians are aggressively taking out loans and payday loans despite the fact that interest rates are rising faster than incomes. The country's economy is currently growing not from import substitution or investments, but due to a rise in consumer demand that's being fueled by loans. This kind of economic growth can't be sustained for long. Its slowdown or even decline are the most likely scenarios for the future. End quote. According to Ndroshin, these microfinance organizations currently have a greater impact on the market than actual banks do. Quote, this is due to the tightening of credit policies and the increase of key interest rate, which, by the way, is 16% in Russia at this point, gonna grow up soon, probably, at which banks lend money, he explained. As a result, MFOs have seen an additional influx of clients, which has enabled them to set a new record in loan volumes. According to data from Russian Central Bank, some of the people who took out payday loans in the first quarter of 2024 had previously obtained bank loans. Kulbak, the other economist, told Holod that he also expects to see a continued rise in the number of payday loans being issued in Russia. Quote, banks used to give loans even to clients who are already devoting most of their income to paying off existing loans. Now they're increasingly refusing people. He said, adding that he expects the trend to persist for the next 6 months since inflation does not seem to be slowing down. The fewer loans banks approve, the more people turn to MFOs. Ultimately, this leads to an increase in bankruptcies. This is what he said to the journalist. MFOs, these microfinance organizations in Russia, often bundle their loans with other services, from text message notifications to life insurance and legal consultations. The cost of these services can be as high as the loan amount itself and also incurs interest. Defaulting on payments on these fees can lead to penalties, legal proceedings, and damage to credit history, obviously. Lawyer Philip Pokrovsky spoke about this again to my colleagues in Holod. Quote, if you stop making payments, interest and penalties will start accruing in addition to the principal debt. According to Russian law, the sum of fines and interest on contracts lasting less than 1 year cannot exceed 130% of the principal debt, meaning that for a loan of 10,000 rubles, MFOs can demand repayment of up to 23,000 rubles. Which is, again, might not be that much for you guys who live in Western Europe or America, but again, wartime, Russia, criminalization, yeah, it's painful, especially since these people really, they didn't have money in the first place, which is why they turned to these loan sharks. One of the main risks that the MFO clients face is the accumulation of multiple loans. Pokrovsky explains that when a person starts extending their debts, it can turn into a vicious cycle. They're compelled to take out additional payday loans to settle previous ones. In addition to the traditional bankruptcy process, personal one, Russian law allows certain categories of the population, such as retired people, pensioners, to go through a simplified out-of-court bankruptcy process. More than 12,000 people initiated this process in the first quarter of 2024. More than 5 times the number of people who did so in the same period the previous year. The number of judicial bankruptcies rose by 18.2% to 89,800 over the same period. Since Russia first gave individuals the right to file for bankruptcy in 2015, at this point, over 1 million Russians have already declared themselves insolvent. And, to end on a bit more funnier note, in the good old Meanwhile in Russia segment, before we finish this one up, we have utterly insane news going on. The State Duma Committee on Culture recommended adopting a bill to limit access to books in libraries whose authors were declared foreign agents. Amendments to the law on librarianship were prepared by a group of deputies led by the chairman of the Culture Committee, Yelena Yampolskaya. The bill was submitted to the State Duma at the end of March 2024. The document assumes that the Ministry of Culture will develop rules for the placement and provision in libraries of books whose authors have been included in the register of foreign agents or the list of terrorists and extremists. The document also provides for the creation of a special list of books that will be subject to the new rules. I can only imagine that book burnings are soon to follow. What those new rules will be, however, currently is unclear. One of the authors of the bill, first deputy chairman of this committee, Yelena Drapenko, in a conversation with the parliamentary newspaper, suggested that such books could be transferred to special storage, taking as a basis the Soviet system, which I can explain to you, where you could go to a library and you could read like regular books, which are censored and approved, but you can only access the dangerous list books if you were a certain specialist. Like if you were a proper historian and vetted and everything, then you could get to read some of these stuff, at least in the harshest era. And they want to bring it all stuff back, which is just amazing. The Russian government conceptually supported this bill, but with the condition that it would be finalized in the future. Which is just, again, crazy. Like I said, I presume book burning's coming soon. But for me, sleep's coming soon because Evit is already quite angry and I need to sleep and finally get that, Russian studies record and everything. It's just that all this prison crisis was just taking too much from my life. But that's it for today. До свидания, товарищи. And thank you for listening as usual. And remember to go and check out our Discord channel. We're going to be talking there on Friday with John. And as usual, happiness is mandatory.